Welcome back to Vendetta Sports Media's NBA preview series. My name's Jarrod Prosser. I'm here with Jerry Walker once again, and today we are going to talk about the Windy City. It's the Bulls. Jerry, let's talk about these Chicago Bulls. Bit of a disappointing season last year. Started off with some promise, but died away.
Yeah, Bulls looked really good starting the season, but when you're in a division with the Bucks and Giannis, you kind of always seem to fall by the wayside a little bit, and that sure enough, that's what the Bulls did. They ended up finishing 46 and 36, sixth place in the East, second in their division, and they did make the playoffs, but they came up against their division rivals, the Milwaukee Bucks, and went down pretty easily, losing the series 4-1 in the first round.
And those injury concerns that hit the Bulls pretty much robbed them of their backcourt, certainly of their defensive presence in Ball and Caruso. They haven't really abated. Lonzo Ball's still on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's going to be a big question for the Bulls this year is if and when Lonzo comes back, because there was news recently that he still can't really put much pressure on his leg, can't run, can't jump. So if he's out,
kind of important skills for a basketballer.
Yeah, just a little bit. But if he can't come back for a while, the Bulls might be in trouble starting out the season.
Yeah, and look, there are some young players there. I mean, Kobe White is a bit of a spark plug offensive player, and Ayo Dosunmu, he showed quite a bit last season as a rookie. Like a very good defensive player, and showed a little bit more offense than I think anybody, bar his own mother, perhaps thought he had. So there is some depth there, but at the same time, Lonzo's Lonzo. He's not a superstar, but he's a very good player, and he's better than those other guys he's the starter for a reason.
Yeah, and I mean he's their ball distributor, so I think he's one of the top two on the team, if not the leader in assists in the games that he played. But losing him will be big, as we saw last season.
Now let's talk about who the Bulls brought in and who they let go over the offseason.
Coming in, the two guys who kind of stood out to me they didn't make any huge moves, but they brought in Andrew Drummond, which I think he could be a decent backup center. He was always a good defensive center in Detroit and good rebounder, but
very good rebounder.
So seeing him behind Vucevic will be interesting to see, because I think Vucevic is a very good center, kind of one of those underrated fives in the league.
Mm.
And then the other
guy, an interesting signing in that they're so different as well. Vooch is he's a good low post player, but he's not a supreme athlete. He's a very good pick and pop player, nice passer, but isn't much of a defensive presence, isn't a shot blocker, isn't a great rebounder. Drummond's, Drummond isn't a great offensive player. Like, let's face it, he's always just been his range has been the length of his arm. But, a decent shot blocker, decent steals, probably a bit overrated defensively in his prime, but like an all-time great rebounder. It just does stuff that Vooch won't do.
Yeah.
And likewise, Vooch does stuff that Drummond can't do. So it's an interesting signing in the contrast in the styles of the two players.
Absolutely. And then the other signing that kind of stood out to me a little bit, because he used to be a little bit better, but Goran Dragic, he adds a little bit of depth to that backcourt that may be missing Lonzo Ball for a little while. So I think he was always kind of an underrated player when he was in Phoenix, especially. But
yeah, given his age, I'm not. I don't think anyone expects Dragic to go for 25 minutes a game,
exactly.
But at the same time, he's certainly the most pure, the most traditional point guard that Chicago have on their roster without Lonzo being available. So it'd be interesting to see how much they do lean on him.
Yeah, otherwise
So who did the Bulls lose this offseason?
Really, they didn't lose too many players. They lost Troy Brown to the Lakers, Tyler Cook, who just became a free agent, and then the only reasonably big name they lost was Tristan Thompson. But I personally completely forgot that he was even on the Bulls last year. He was there, but I always just remembered him on Cleveland as that ferocious rebounder during their couple titles. So he's not a huge loss there either.
No, he's been to be honest, Drummond gives them more than what Thompson would have anyway. So it's a good
an
replacement.
upgrade.
Yeah. So the Bulls are, last season when they made their big moves for Lonzo and for DeRozan, there was a lot of talk about who the man would be on the Bulls. As much as Levine played well, the last shot was always going to DeRozan. Do you think he remains the star man this season, or does Zach Levine retake that mantle?
I think he has to remain as the star man, the first guy with the ball for the last shot, just because he did have one of arguably his best seasons last year. He struggled a little bit in San Antonio after leaving Toronto. Didn't do a ton, but last year he came out and set a career high in points with 27.9 a game. He was made his first All-Star selection since 2018, and he made his third All-NBA team selection since 2018 as well, was the last time he did that. So he's just one of those guys who's seen it all through the league, seen the league change. He has a very good veteran leader for that team, and I mean, he can still shoot the ball pretty well. Nothing like he used to, but I still think he's the Bulls' number one guy.
Especially his mid-range game is still elite.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell he's a Kobe disciple. Like that footwork in that mid post, in that high post is just like, it's glorious. You could record DeMar DeRozan putting moves on players with his back to them and show that to kids that you coach and say, this is it. This is what you do. His footwork's perfect. And he has developed his three-point shot. It's probably come 5 or 6 years too late, but he has developed his three-point shot.
Yeah, because that was always the thing he was kind of missing in Toronto, was he was athletic as hell. He could pass the ball, he could defend decently thanks to his athleticism a lot, but he just could never shoot that three ball. And in the era of the NBA where three-point shooting is almost essential for any team to make any run, he's now
particularly a guard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's let's switch it over to and focus on the Bulls' X factor. Now, is it a player? Is it a vibe? Is it a particular methodology you're looking at? And is it too simplistic to say it's Lonzo?
It is. I would say it isn't necessarily Lonzo, but it is going to be that kind of who is going to fill in and be that second option, whether it's Zach Levine or Aya Dosunmu, whether it's one of those two guys stepping in and getting big minutes, taking those big shots in crunch time. It's going to be that. That's the X factor for me, is who's going to step in and be that second guy after DeRozan. And I do think it'll end up being Zach Levine. Because
it has to be Levine. He's on the max contract. It's got to be Levine.
Yeah, exactly. And he showed promise in some certain things in Minnesota, but he never really lived up to much in Minnesota outside of his dunk contest abilities. That's kind of just what put him on the map. But in Chicago, he showed that he is actually a good all-around player and can do a little bit of everything. Yeah,
and look, I mean, he's certainly not an average defensive player by any means, but he's not the tire fire that he used to be. He can at least try to hold up his end on defense now, which is, as sad as that is, that's actually a really big improvement on what Levine used to be defensively. And look, I hope that Levine, and I'm assuming he would, he strikes me as a good pro. I mean, he was the 16th, 17th pick back in his draft class and has turned himself into a max player. So I'm assuming he's a good pro who learns from people around him, but I'd love to see him develop some of that mid-range game that DeRozan has, that mid-range craft. He's got a brilliant teacher that he can work with every day, because you throw in Levine's explosiveness to the basket and his ability to shoot from deep. That mid-range game has never really been his thing. You throw that in and you've got a genuine three-level scorer there. Like that could be the thing that takes Levine into the high 20s rather than the low to mid.
Yeah, absolutely. If he can develop that mid-range, his offense is so much more well-rounded than it is. And it's going to just if he can just pull up and pop from the short elbow or the high elbow, it'll be opening up him to drive in later in the game, or even cut back out, maybe off a pick and roll. They think he's going to drive through, just step back, hit a mid-ranger instead. Yeah.
It just creates uncertainty in the defense. And that's all you ever want as an offensive player. You want the defender to have to react to you rather than dictate to you. So if like at the moment, if Levine doesn't pull up, if he drives, he's going to the basket more often than not. So you can play for that. If he can develop some of that craft, that stop and pop, that, even just backing people down and rising up over them, because he is, 6'5". He's a big guy for a guard. So yeah, I'd love to see him develop some DeRozan-ness to his game. Just a quick one. We spoke about Lonzo on and off here. Who do you think starts at the 1 on opening night? Is it Dosunmu? Is it Dragic? Is it White? Do they go with Caruso, and knowing that DeRozan and Levine are going to have the ball and not run with a traditional point guard?
I mean, that would be an interesting choice to see Alex Caruso, just because I think he gives that second unit so much more than he would give to that first unit. I think, especially on the defensive end. So I think he's kind of needed more as that second string guy.
That's a great point. If you rob the second unit to pay the first, then who steps into that second unit? That's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think I would love to see Kobe White take a step up and be that starting point guard, but I do think it's going to be Dosunmu as the starter on opening night. I just think
the defensive option.
Yeah, exactly. He gives them the defense because they don't need the offense necessarily with DeRozan and Levine if they play well. But it's also not robbing them of something like Alex Caruso, who also is a great defender. But I think he can do more on the second unit, like I said, than Dosunmu could do on the second unit. So I think it'll kind of lean towards him.
I was thinking it might have been White, but just you're swinging me towards Dosunmu there. I think that is a good option because, again, he's not going to need to handle the ball. You've got Levine and DeRozan who 1A, 1B, whatever order, they will be the initiators of the offense. So if Dosunmu can hit, catch and shoot threes and play hard-nosed defense, that's all you want from your starting one in Chicago. So, yeah, I think you've swung me. I think I'd probably agree with that call. So let's move on to predictions here, Jerry. The Bulls finished 6th last season, and that was with a pretty sharp drop once injuries hit them. This was a team that was sitting top 2, top 3 for the first half of the season and sitting on top of the conference for a short while as well. So it's probably a tough one to predict, but where do you think they'll finish in the conference? How many games will they win?
I do think losing Lonzo Ball for the beginning of the season will set them off on a rocky start. I have the Bulls finishing with 42 wins to go with 40 losses, so just above that 500 mark. But I think we're going to see early in the season how big of a loss Lonzo Ball really is because he's the distributor on that first unit. He finds open guys in Levine and DeRozan. I just think it'll be tough. He's a tough player to replace.
Yeah.
And I think when he comes back, they might be able to pick it up a bit and start winning a lot more than they did in the first half. But by then, I think it might be a little too late for them.
And you'd expect they'd have to bring him along slowly after essentially 9 months on the sidelines as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. There's some players who are capable, but no one really inspires massive confidence as they can step up and be Lonzo or be a good replacement for him.
Yeah.
So 42 wins, that's a drop for them. A drop of 4 wins.
It is. And I still think they'll finish second in the division. I think just because Detroit, the only team who I think could maybe jump over them is Cleveland because getting Donovan Mitchell will be interesting for them. But I still think the Bulls are better than the Cavs. So I have them finishing, I think just slightly, but I have them finishing ahead of second in their division. But I think they'll finish in the 8th seed in the regular season and have to go through that play-in.
Okay. So there you have it. And despite Lonzo aside, some hopefully improved health for Chicago, Jerry Walker calling it, the Bulls will go backwards. 2022 was the flash in the pan for Chicago. So 42 wins, an 8th seed, says Jerry Walker. Again, get involved. Tweet us. Jerry's at JerryF007. I'm at _it's_JP. And that will do us for our Chicago Bulls preview here for Vendetta Sports Media. This will go up on our YouTube channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll try English. Make sure you get in the comments. Let us know what you think. Are we overselling or underselling the Bulls? Let us know. Get involved. Get the debate happening. My name's Jarrod Prosser. That's Jerry Walker, and we'll see you for our next preview.